My brother went missing 6 years ago. Police came yesterday to ask if we have seen him lately. My twin brother went missing on the 23rd of July in 2011. He was 19 years old and went out for a run and never came back. We have used every resource at our disposal, police, PIs, etc., and we never found even a hint. It was like he had disappeared from the face of the earth. I don't think there's a PI in town that we haven't hired yet. He hasn't accessed his bank accounts, healthcare, his social media accounts, his emails, nothing. You can imagine how difficult it has been for our family. Yesterday afternoon, a police officer came to my place to ask me questions about him, whether I had seen him lately, if I knew where he lived, if I know any of his recent friends, and questions like that. When I asked what this is about and what do they know about him, he said he can't say anything at this time. This same police officer has left a voicemail on my mother's phone asking her for a time to meet to ask her a few questions. I told him everything and begged him to tell me what is going on, but he refused. I went to the police station today, but couldn't get any information from them and couldn't find this officer. It's a Saturday after all. I'm going to go again on Monday. What is the best way for me to get some information about what is going on here? By best, I mean most likely to succeed. I imagine there's no law that says the police officer is required to tell us if he has learned something about my brother, right? Is there any law or some Freedom of the Information Act or whatever that might help me uncover what is going on? Update. I talked to the officer in charge of the investigation for my brother being missing. They found his name written in a notebook which belonged to a drug trafficker. The officer who was looking for him was wondering if my brother was still missing after talking to the officer in charge of that investigation. 3 days later, we received the call that they may have found my brother's remains and they needed DNA samples to confirm. DNA confirmed it was him. What happened was that when he went out that day, he saw his friend and they went to see another friend of his, not my brother. That was a drug dealing location. Things went bad when my brother was there and someone was heavily beaten up, which my brother and his friend saw. That's when they decided to. His friend was kept silent under the threat for his life. He was dealing for them. Recently, he was arrested and confessed and reported my brother's death to get a better deal. The officer says my brother didn't die in pain. It was multiple gunshots. You'd expect after 6 years of playing this possibility in our heads, we would have been prepared for it, but we weren't. We had a funeral for him. Now there's a place that I can go and talk to him and at least feel a little closer to him even though he's gone. I thank all of you who helped. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You know, it's great on one hand to finally be able to have some sort of closure, but it sucks when the closure is as brutal as that. I mean, he was just a kid out for a run and found himself in the wrong place, and it's as somebody who also comes from a big family of multiple brothers, I can't imagine losing a single one of them. So my heart really does go out to you, and I hope you're doing okay. I know that the closure isn't exactly going to heal much, but I hope you have something and you can kind of find some sort of peace and not being shrouded in mystery any longer. And having that physical location to be able to kind of connect to him now is hopefully going to help a little bit. But again, I wish you the best and I pray you're doing okay. Story 2. Am I the butthole for jumping out of the way when my niece and nephew tried to push me into a pool, resulting in them falling in? OP reluctantly goes to a family barbecue. OP's nephews and nieces push people into the pool and eventually try with OP. OP sees this coming from a mile away and steps out of the way, and the kids fall in, along with the phone they were holding to record. OP's sister got so mad for almost letting their kids drown, and because the phone is now at the bottom of the pool. They insist that OP should have let the kids push him into the pool and OP needs to apologize. Update post, almost 1 month later. OP spends the first part of this post explaining that the kids were fully capable of swimming and that the party ended on a sour note. Turns out, a drunk BIL who face-planted had to get stitches. Sisters and BIL texted mean stuff to OP, and he and his wife blocked them. Mom and Dad were so mad at all the texts and made the sisters apologize and end the nonsense. OP thought things were over, but instead gets a text from one BIL saying OP needs to reimburse them for the phone. OP refuses, sends a screenshot to his parents, and says he's going no contact with his sisters. In what OP says is an out-of-character move. Dad calls sisters and rips them a new one. Grandkids are no longer welcome at their place indefinitely, which messes up the free babysitting mom provides. They are banned from the vacation house, and he tells them that OP owns that vacation house. not the parents. Sisters freak out. Sisters and husbands come over unannounced to apologize a few days later. OP and wife are out at dinner, so they leave a note. OP decides no contact is the best option for now. Update 2. 9 days from previous post. OP's parents feel awful and let OP know. They figure that the sisters will try to convince OP to let them rent out the house. Turns out they're right. The sisters show up and practically force their way inside OP's house to convince them to let them use the place. They also say, quoting from OP here, "I've been a crappy brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college's tuitions since that's what family does." OP calls them out on their bullcrap, and there's a huge blow-up and the sisters leave. OP is exhausted, frustrated, and drained. Update 3. 2.5 weeks from last update. OP locks the gate with a heavy-duty chain and lock, resets all keypads and creates new codes, gets security cameras, and has signs put up saying the area is monitored by video. OP gets a call from both husbands trying to convince him to let them use the house, like they always have. Oldest BIL tried to go up with some friends but couldn't get in. He threatens on the phone to basically break in and acts completely entitled. Other BIL sounds like he is being made to call by sister. OP obviously says no and considers selling the home. He also has no plans to initiate contact with sisters, and they are not talking with him. Update 4. 1 month later, parents ask OP to not sell for now as they would still like to use the place, but won't until sisters have come to terms with the new normal. Wife and OP have stayed no contact with sisters, but they have called and left messages. OP says, "F you, Google Voice," demanding OP meets with them and work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. OP doesn't respond. OP also does not plan to turn the vacation home into an Airbnb. This part is directly from the post. "My parents tell me that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big truck, and are selling their jet skis and some other stuff they've never needed. That's going to be really hard on her. She's quite the braggart and won't be like seen in something older / smaller / cheaper. My BIL's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo, which frankly is one of the many reasons why he and I never hung out." Update 5. 1.5 months later. Title: Update 5. Crap. Wrote most of this yesterday, but decided to wait to post it until I wasn't so wound up. Waiting didn't work. I'm still wound up. Sorry if this rambles. So much has happened. Hard to write coherently. Things have gone to heck. I really, truly did not think anything like this would happen. Short version. My brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They've been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property, and communicating threats. All Class 1 misdemeanors. I've refused to drop the charges. I might do so if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. I assume they're out by now. Things had settled down. At least I thought so. Haven't seen or heard from my sisters in over 6 weeks. My parents went up to the house for a week and had a good time. David, the property manager I hired, has worked out great. He's done a couple of repairs I asked him to do, and I'm giving him a list that he's going to work on. He usually sends a photo or two of wildlife or a sunset to his clients every week. Was kind of making me want to get up there. Friday after Thanksgiving, my BILs went to my vacation home. They used an angle grinder to cut through the chain on the driveway gate and damaged the gate in the process. They tried to get in through the front door, ruined the lock set, and gouged the door badly. They finally got in through the utility floor door and a locked internal door. They also broke into the barn. I'm not sure why. When they went through the front door where they were met by sheriff's deputies and David gets notifications from the camera system when there's activity. He saw what was going on and called the sheriff's department. According to David, the BILs tried to BS their way out of it, but the deputies didn't buy it. Breaking into an empty house is a pretty serious thing up there. Usually it's just potheads who ransack the place and hawk everything. When the BILs were arrested, they freaked out big time. Were saying how they were going to beat the heck out of me, etc. Not smart to do in front of cops. David in the sheriff's office tried calling my wife and me to see what we wanted to do, but we were spending the day with her parents and had left our phones in the car so we could be in a vacation mood. So they booked the BILs on everything, which is what I would have asked them to do anyway. BILs called their wives from jail, who of course freaked out. They called my folks, tried to call me, They're blocked. Tried to find a lawyer up there to arrange bail. Not easy to do given that it's a rural area and was a holiday weekend. Older sister has zero cash and her cards are maxed out. So if they made bail, my middle sister would have had to pay for both husbands. I know they were still in jail as of Saturday afternoon. We didn't check our phones until late Friday on the way home from the in-laws. There were a ton of calls and messages from my mom, Dad, David, and the sheriff's department. Talk about ruining a great day. I was in such a good mood till I looked at my phone. My wife read through the texts and listened to the messages, read them out to me, and by the time we got home, I had some idea of what was going on. I put my brain back into thinking mode, tried to get past my anger, failed, called David and got the rundown on what had happened and how bad the damage was, resulting in more anger. I ended Friday by calling the sheriff's department and telling them there was no misunderstanding. The BILs had absolutely no right to be on my property and I wanted to press charges. I didn't call my folks back, and I barely slept. I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all, my mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out, told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which of course made me feel like crap. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over, but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do, and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping for tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and BILs. I don't know what I can do exactly, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me. That might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes. BILs had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things, or that there were cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs though. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her. She's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. Older BIL likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but middle BIL has a security clearance, so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for middle BIL to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty, and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Update 6. 5 days later. Didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. Short version, I think the corner has been turned on this crap. Thursday afternoon, I got a courier-delivered envelope at my office. It was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter they made, what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what I could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was, obviously, a total 180 from their past behavior. I had already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my BILs over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. I called him and told him what I'd just received, and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and BILs. He said if we went after them via a lawsuit, that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more. There would be a sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if he didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement. It won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close an estimate as possible ASAP. Got that Friday. He thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday, my attorney contacted each of the BILs, told them what we were proposing and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. The middle BIL told them they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer, but not both. And they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference, given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do and sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor, and left them a message, but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the BILs are paying up and they have no priors. But then again, he's not a criminal lawyer. Also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and BILs, especially for the next 6 months, and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. I'm guessing that the BIL's change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, what it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines, and so on. There's also the highly unlikely possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days. And as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me past the legal and financial parts of this crap show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again, and that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life, and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was, weirdly, a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment. I'll dang sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped me clear my head and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support, and I really hope none of you ever have to go through this kind of nonsense. Update 7, 5 days later. Update 7, 5 days later. Tuesday morning, I met with my attorney and went over the agreement. Changed a couple of minor things and he sent it to my sisters and brother-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place, wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from the break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees, and whatever else he could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle BIL appeared to have taken charge, and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the heck up or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us, and the rest of them could all go to heck. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500, claimed that's all they had. It's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so mad that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off, failed utterly. Ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour, letting me spew and vent. He eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me and I felt better. After lunch, I went to the DA's office. Hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while, but got to meet with the assistant DA who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the BILs have already paid for the damages, that they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The BILs will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judges set. I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge or ever so much as fart in public up there, that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the BILs didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. Wanted to thank the deputies personally, but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get a hold of him. A couple of notes. The agreement includes a no contact clause. Basically, if any of them show up where my wife and I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. No contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. And we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that, but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that, I can't talk about most of this, but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense, but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. New update, 3.5 months later, 8 months from the original post. Oldest sister and BIL have filed for bankruptcy. I thought it would be worth an update for anyone who's interested. Unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially or otherwise, they've also managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year, my BIL's oversized, customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him, I'm sure. Happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck, they have to share a Kia my parents loaned them, and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially, they're screwed. They owe at least $125,000, probably more, on high-interest credit cards. They have zero equity in their house and have a couple of personal loans that I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs, and trailers. They also owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months and were behind on their house payments as well. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it as well, so had to come up with the cash to do so. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine and court costs for my BIL's trespassing charge at the vacation house. And they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their portion of the damages to the place. As I've mentioned before, my folks have never been financial wizards, but they have at least been generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off, and they live off of Social Security and pensions. Altogether, they get more than they spend. Minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out my folks emptied out that fund, cashed out their small IRA, around $20K, and gave it to my sister. That let her catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now, literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus, my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sisters worked for my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually, Mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement, but they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it. The way the bankruptcy laws are in our state, by getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this, and my sisters mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more upset about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and BIL could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no contact agreement has is that if they violate it, we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they've filed for bankruptcy, that's now not an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows. Folks also told me that my middle sister and her husband have hit a rough spot, and that he's not currently living with her and the kids. Just a guess, but I imagine he's had it with the whole family dynamic that caused this nonsense. Not directly related, but on a brighter note, I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing, very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, thanks Starlink, which is nice. Plus knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape, ready for us to visit and to help if we get snowed in eliminates most of the stress in owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. Relevant comments. Could you get a restraining order? If they start up again, I do indeed plan to get a restraining order. In fact, my wife made it clear to me she expects a very hard approach to any BS from them going forward, which I agree with, of course. I had the security cameras at our house upgraded at the start of the year just in case they come by. I also kept all their previous texts and provided screenshots to my attorney for safekeeping. If they caused any trouble at the vacation house, they're toast. The sheriff's department and DA's office have the full story and are sympathetic to our situation. If they lose their home, they may demand to live in the mountain house or with your parents. Thankfully, my folks live in an over 55 community, so they can't move in there. Plus, the house is not anywhere near large enough for 7 people unless everybody stays in the great room all the time, and God knows where they'd park. Living in the vacation house isn't practical for them either. Again, something I'm happy about. With the traffic, it's probably 3 hours from there to my BIL's job. They'd have to have 4-wheel drive vehicles to live there year-round too. Plus, from what I understand, the schools there are not very good. I'm being polite. And as much as I dislike my sister, I'll say that she's all in on keeping her kids in good schools. They can afford their current house once they get through bankruptcy, assuming they change how they spend. I think they'll have to. No one in their right mind would lend them money or give them a credit card. They won't be able to take fancy vacations or swap out his truck every couple of years for an even bigger one. Yeah, I admit that gosh dang truck fetish of this really bugs me. But they'll live just fine. It's not like a family of 5 is going to suffer when they're taking in close to $200,000 per year. Hopefully I'm not being Pollyannish about all this. They should have sold the truck and other things months ago. To be fair, and this is according to my parents, they tried to sell the ATVs and watercraft, but the value on those things dropped like a rock the moment you buy them, and they were upside down on the loans. So they eventually just quit paying on them. Also, this reminds me, when they broke into the vacation house, they also broke into the mini barn. Turns out my oldest BIL had stowed his 2 ATVs in it. Just guessing, but I think he was going to take them, report them stolen, get an insurance settlement, and sell them on the sly. I found out in January that the ATVs were there and paid to have them taken to my dad's place. He had my BIL pick them up from there. Also, I don't think my BIL was expecting the truck to be repoed. I think he was working to catch up on the payments so they'd have one good vehicle. The finance company must have just run out of patience. Don't blame them. He's a screw-up. Commenter. They must have been making quite a packet from their fraudulent vacation home income for it to impact their finances to this extent. OP. I think they were grossing at least $50K per year, probably more. Tax-free, it was never listed on Airbnb as far as I can tell. They'd rent to friends, friends of friends, etc. I based the $50K on the fact that my parents kept a calendar for the house to keep track of who was using the place. I went through the last 3 years worth of calendars and my sisters were using the place a lot, sometimes for a week at a time. Supposedly, they were doing school-related planning retreats as well as just family time. I know similar places go for $2,000 or more per weekend and at least $4,000 for a week. It can sleep 6 people in bedrooms and has a bunk room for kids that all 5 would stay in. Plus, it has 2 queen-size pull-out sofas. If you pushed it, you could fit more people than that. I think my sisters are just spendaholics. They constantly have the newest whatever. iPads, TVs, clothes, diets, you name it. So no matter how much they got, they'd spend more. So this was going to happen eventually. $125,000 on credit cards? $125,000 is my estimate based on my sister telling my parents they were racking up at least $3,000 per month just in credit card interest. She thought it might be more. Their credit was already crap before the bankruptcy, so I'm guessing they might be paying as high as 28% interest. If so, they'd owe about $125,000. If they're paying a lower interest rate, the principal would be higher. But yeah, it's an absurd amount. And that $3,000 doesn't include all the other interest they're paying. And of course, there's the principal that just sits there. On the other hand, I'm told they had a great time going to Disney World for a week, so there's that. If your parents ask you for money, make sure to make them sign something. Since all this started, I've given a fair amount of thought regarding my parents and their possible, likely, need for money in the future. I've come up with an approach that I think will work for me. It's a bit mercantile, but it's the best way I've come up with. If and when my parents need money, I'm going to do a formal loan secured by their home. Basically, it will be a private HELOC, home equity line of credit, at market interest rate. They can pay it back or not, but when they go to sell the house or die, I'll be first in line to get paid with interest. This means they can waste it on my sisters if they choose to, but at the end, it will come out of the sisters' share of the house. I'll end up paying for my folks' end-of-life care after they run out of money/equity in their house regardless, of course. It's not like my siblings will contribute. Middle BIL. Younger BIL seems to be more decent than I've given him credit for in the past. I'll admit to a bit of myopia. For years I've seen the four of them and their kids as just one mass of inconvenient people I have nothing in common with but can't avoid. But he seems to have hit his limits and made some changes. Hope it works out for him and that he pulls my sister in the right direction. How sisters got so entitled. My sisters, and I, weren't raised to be like they are. When I was young, they weren't any more self-entitled than any other teenagers. We all worked crappy teenage jobs, didn't get spoiled. It was a really standard suburban upbringing. We weren't super close, but we weren't enemies. Somewhere along the line, after going off to college, they changed for the worse. I guess it could be worse. They could have been addicts or militant vegan volcano worshippers or whatever. But they sure became people I don't want to be around. And yes, the pool incident was the spark for the meltdown, but the fuel had been accumulating for years. It would have come out at some point that she was renting the house out on the sly, and things would have gone to heck then, just like they did now. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin with this one. I mean, 8 months ago, he said, so almost a whole year since this family get-together barbecue where his nieces and nephews were going to push him and his wife into a pool, but they just moved out of the way, the kids fell in, and the phone got broken or whatever, and holy crap. I will say, I do feel for the kids. I mean, it's not their fault on the way they're being raised, and now all this kind of stuff is blowing up. The parents might be getting divorced and leaving, like, you know, they didn't really do anything wrong. They're harmless and bystander in this, and I hope they don't ever feel guilty in some way that it was their fault, that this was the spark. So I don't know what's going on, and I hope the kids are doing okay. But after that, the fact that these parents went over and demanded money for this phone that their own kids broke is ridiculous. And then to find out that they were secretly renting out a vacation home that was actually his, and then broke things and tried to break it, like, it's just a crazy amount of family drama to go down. I mean, if you think your family get-togethers are a bit hectic, this guy's got us all beat. It's really crazy. It's sad. You know, you don't like to hear any sort of families kind of disperse, and it just keeps getting worse and worse every single update. He begins to give more and more information about how it's all deteriorating, and it sucks, man. You know, it sucks for everybody involved. I mean, also pretty self-inflicted on their part, but for this guy, he didn't really do anything wrong. He's just kind of trying to live his life. His poor wife is dragged into all this mess, and he's just trying to, like, back out. All he wants to do is remove himself from the situation, but people keep chasing him down. They make more problems. They break into his property. It's this whole big spiel, and he's just trying to take care of his parents too. Like, he really is a good guy, and he's constantly being pressed over it. And I'm glad to hear that it's kind of gotten better. Like, it's kind of the end of the story. Again, it sucks that the family never found some sort of resolution, but you know what? I'm gonna hope and pray for the best for them regardless, and I hope that all the kids and everybody's doing okay. You know, I'm hoping that there will be a happy ending after the updates are all said and done. Story 3. Am I the butthole for taking in my problem cousin and canceling family events? Me, 30-year-old male, and wife, 27-year-old female, own a sizable farm that is usually the nexus of family events. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 300 acres, and electrical hookups for 4 campers, so the whole clan can come stay for extended visits in the summer. We built it that way deliberately. My cousin Bill, early 50s male, has a daughter Alice, 18-year-old female, from his first marriage. His first wife was an immigrant with no family in our country and no contact with any family in her home country. She passed away when Alice was 2, and Bill remarried Tanya, early 50s female, 6 months later. They have since had 3 kids, 14-year-old male, 12-year-old male, and 8-year-old female. Alice is a brat. Everything in their house revolves around either the boys, their 2 oldest together, or their princess, their daughter together, and Alice is left behind. She doesn't get to go on family trips, they wouldn't pay for extracurricular stuff, she couldn't take elective classes that had extra fees, etc. I'm not a smart man, but I can recognize a kid that's hurting inside and being neglected. She's like Mr. Hyde with them and Dr. Jekyll elsewhere. For the last 4 summers, she's been coming to work on my farm because her parents don't want her around over summer break. She turned 18 recently, and leading up to her birthday, her dad was very adamant that she was being kicked out of the house when she turned 18 because it will teach her responsibility. We, wife, Alice and I, discussed it, and early on her birthday, we pulled up with my truck and packed her stuff up. We only packed things she purchased herself or things that were given to her by another person. My boss got creative with our benefits provider so we can get Alice on my medical benefits until she finishes university. She starts in a few weeks. So she's able to go to therapy. He reads this subreddit a lot, so even though this is a throwaway, I know you'll read this, Chief. Thank you. And she's able to get back into sports while saving her money. This is where it all comes apart. Bill and Tanya are so mad that we took her in and refused to come to family events. Part of the family refused to attend as well because I'm undermining Bill and Tanya. I'll understand when I have kids. After they refused to attend events, a few others said that with gas being so expensive and not everyone attending, they'd skip as well. My answer of, okie dokie, come if you want and don't if you don't, further upset people who thought I should have tried harder to get people to come. So now we're down to about a quarter of the family in attendance for events. My aunt suggested that we have Alice over on weekends and that she stays in a dorm during the week to smooth things over. I think that's dumb, but I'm dumb and stubborn. My wife thinks it's dumb and she's really smart, but also very attached to the situation. Alice said she'd rather stay with us, but would try the dorms to help make peace. Am I the butthole for not going with the dorm suggestion to keep the peace? Edit for info. I called Alice a brat, and my original post was way past the character limit, but in some of the stuff that got pared down, I explained it more. Typical teenage acting out, but cranked up. Slamming doors, screaming matches with her stepmom, swearing, probably 3 or 4 big blowouts a week, and sometimes over some pretty disproportionately small stuff. I've watched her grow, and the acting out definitely came after the exclusion from family stuff. Edit 2. Thank you everyone. Gonna keep on keeping on. Bit of a mini update. I ripped the band-aid off with the old fam jam and told them that fewer mouths to feed isn't the punishment they thought it was. Anyone else who was coming is still welcome, and I'd have the extra cash from not feeding so many people to help the folks concerned about gas prices to make it out if they so choose. I'm in like 4 different family group chats and they're all lighting up. I'm going to turn my phone on silent for a while and let the sparks fly. I'll check in on the post in a while, and if anything noteworthy comes up and it's interesting, I'll give you all an update in the future. Edit 3. 1 day later. Alrighty, here's the update on the situation and a little background info for some consistent topics in the comments. So, my family likes to gossip and they're dang efficient at it. If your truck breaks down with only you in it 5 miles from home, word has reached every aunt and cousin before you're in your door. When I put the word out, it traveled fast. This morning I've been called all the names in the book and some new ones, so there may be a revised and updated edition of said book coming out. I've been told I'm a good guy, a bad guy, I'm stupid, I'm smart, I'm short-sighted, I'm thinking ahead. It's been neat. Long story short, I've got about a dozen relatives telling me thanks and they'll buy me a pint next time they're out, and about triple that who never want to speak to me again, so those are both significant victories. Now, nobody here really cares about me. We're all about Team Alice here. She's a Redditor apparently and came across the post independently of me showing her. There were tears, born of stress and relief I think, and she's going to be staying here with us until she's ready to start the next chapter of her life, whatever and whenever that might be. She's got classes picked. Her college picks first-year classes for you for the most part, so it was a couple electives, and is looking into the women's rec league for a hockey team when the season starts, so she's all set on that front. Regarding feeding everyone and paying for gas, without going into details, I was very fortunate as a young man to be working very hard at a job I was woefully underqualified for a while, and a very wealthy person was on site. Basically right place, right time, and the chief took me in and mentored me. We have made a lot of money on a business venture together in addition to me working for him. And since then, I haven't exactly had FU money, but enough that I was able to buy the property I live on outright and build my home here with my wife who also makes good money. Family is important to both of us, and neither of our sides of the family tree have much money, so we've done our best to make sure money isn't a barrier to getting together and seeing one another. Now the big news. Tanya drove down to my house this morning. Bill and I had some very loud, very angry words when he drove down last night after I chose the nuclear option in the family group chats, so she actually waved a white flag from her car when she pulled up. I shooed the dogs and alpaca away and went out to talk to her, brought her out a muffin, and we had a bit of a chat. Allegedly, Bill was threatening to kick Alice out to scare her straight, and that they weren't actually going to kick her out, and they were caught off guard when we showed up on the morning of her birthday. I told her that she was missing the point and that I'm not sure I could use small enough words or short enough sentences to explain it to her if she thought that was the only problem. She cried, she peeled out of my driveway at Mach 7, and it's been radio silent since, which I'm currently enjoying. Thanks everyone for the support. I'm not really a Reddit guy, so I don't imagine I'll be back, but for my brief stay here, you definitely don't live up to the negative reputation the rest of the internet has given your site. You're a good bunch. Keep your sticks on the ice. Relevant comments. In our conversation about the dorm, I told her that it was 100% her decision, but that I really didn't care about cousins I only see when I'm feeding them show up, and that I wanted her to make the call that made her happy. Consensus between her and my wife seems to be that maybe in a few years the dorm would be a good step between living at home and getting her own place, but staying with us for now is what she wants. More about Alice's relationship with Bill and Tanya. At this point, it's pure speculation, but I've always sort of picked up that Bill is of the opinion that Tanya and their kids together are his family, and she's this sort of Harry Potter-esque relation he's stuck with. At first, I thought it was a race thing. Her mom was from Guatemala, and she has dark skin and pin-straight dark hair, rather than being pale curly-haired like the rest of us. But as she aged, if you compare photos of her mom to her at the same ages, they could have been twins. I think it's a lot of jealousy from Tanya, and Bill is just a dirtbag, so I have no idea how his brain works. More on OP using the term brat. What I meant is that Alice acts out pretty severely and is like a completely different kid with her folks than anywhere else. If you ask her teachers, coaches, other relatives who have her over will all tell you she's a great kid, smart, and compassionate. You see her at home with her parents, and it's a different story. I 100% recognize that she's acting out so badly because the only time she gets any attention at home is when she's being punished. But I cut the part explaining that out because I'm not such good with the wordsmithing sometimes. Alice doesn't cause harm from anything I've ever seen or been told. She stomps off and slams her bedroom door, gets into shouting matches with her stepmom, and swears a lot. More about the rest of the family. Her dad and I have locked horns over this a few times. I was still a youngin' myself when her mom passed, so I haven't always been in a position to do anything more than lock horns, but I've at least been here. Not to excuse the extended family, but I think a fair few of them would be more sympathetic if they lived closer and didn't just get his spin on it over Facebook and saw what the branch of the family tree that lives here sees. They're not a big league of evil aunts and uncles, they're just kinda ignorant and have been fed a very creative interpretation of the truth by Bill and Tanya for over a decade with no evidence of there being more to it. Plus, my dislike for Bill and Tanya is quite well known in our family, which also colors their perception of the situation a bit, I'd wager. Bill remarried Tanya quickly after his first marriage. That does sound ominous when it's put like that, but there's nothing untoward there. Alice's mom was hit by a random drunk driver and Bill's just a schmuck. Without putting the family dirty laundry out there, my understanding is that their marriage was born out of convenience and not necessarily love. That's its own story that doesn't really belong on Reddit. OP is voted NTA. Update, 11 months later. So, about a year ago, my 31-year-old male cousin Alice, 19-year-old female, moved in with my wife, 28-year-old female, on her 18th birthday after being told she needed to move out on said birthday from her parents. Early mid-50s, I don't care enough to do the math, house by said parents. I'm here with an update at her suggestion. The good. A year later, she's a year into an engineering degree. She's been playing lots of hockey, raised a couple of steers all on her own, and at her therapist's recommendation, she's down to monthly sessions after a brief stop at bi-weekly after starting with weekly. She's the same sweet kid, but without the extra unneeded stress of being treated like an also-ran alongside her younger siblings. The bad. Her dad showed up about a month after my original post, and there was a confrontation of sorts that ended with a peace bond being issued with restrictions on how Bill and Tanya would contact Alice, myself, my missus, or a couple other family members that got involved. After the 6 months required by the peace bond, Tanya started getting back up to her old tricks, but Bill seems to have smartened up a bit. The peace bond meant she has had limited contact with her siblings, which has been tough. The oldest, 15-year-old male, started off pretty hostile, but some of the other cousins filled him in on what was going on. I got blamed for his sudden shift in attitude because we've established that I am just the worst with jazz hands and everything. The silly, gossipy family mellowed out when they realized that the literal gravy train wasn't going to stop at the station for them. Thanksgiving last year was 26 people compared to the 60 plus that came the last year I threw it prior to COVID restrictions. Easter this year was back up to an even 40, so we're probably going to plateau a little short of the old members. As for resolution to the problem, Bill has been texting Alice every couple of days to check in. They've gone for coffee a few times after the peace bond expired. I'd go to his funeral, but not his birthday party, were Alice's words when I asked her about where they're at. I'm hoping time can heal that wound, but she's been really good at setting boundaries. To quote one of the great warrior poets of our time, John Cougar Mellencamp, life goes on. I'll answer questions if it's allowed. Otherwise, here's some closure, guys. Edit was to fix spelling. Relevant comments. On Tanya and Bill. Yeah, the two of them are a bit of mustard shy of a sandwich sometimes. They've sworn up and down that they weren't actually going to kick her out and that it was meant to smarten her up and stuff like that. But whether or not they're lying is for someone who cares more about it to figure it out. Kiddos safe and sound, that's what matters. Where they're from. Oh, Canada. That part's not a secret. It's a big place. People from rural Canada talk funny. Truth in television. One more thought on his family and their relationship. I was Alice from my generation of the family tree. And thankfully, while I didn't have a relative to throw me a bone, the chief took me under his wing. Because of this, they, rightly, assume I have a chip on my shoulder and am projecting my own frustration and hurt on the situation. They're wrongly assuming that the chip, frustration, and hurt are the sole motivating factors and that I'm seeing parallels between us that aren't there because of it. This has led some of the family that got one side of things and not the others to be hesitant to take anything I say, do, or think at face value. It is what it is, I suppose. New update, 8 months later, 1.5 years from original post. A friend sent me a YouTube video of Microsoft Sam narrating the previous post and said, "This sounds like your whole mess, dude," the other day, which got me reading through old comments and reminiscing on a slow afternoon. Because I'm a bit scatterbrained, I'm going to do this update in 3 parts. What's happened, what's happening, and miscellaneous comment/question answering. First up, what's happened? It's been a greasy horror show in a lot of ways, but everyone I care about is okay. That's a win, and we take those. I can go into a little more detail because I don't have to follow the am I the butthole rules, just the Reddit ones. So Bill, he's been trying his best. I'll give him that. The guy is as sharp as a sack of wet mice on his best day, so him doing his best isn't particularly impressive, but he's trying, and that's really all you can ask of a person. He was texting Alice every day/every other day and seemed to genuinely want to fix their relationship. They started to communicate less after a month or so, still texting weekly. I admit I got my hackles up over that, but Alice told me we didn't have enough to talk about when I lived there to talk every day. Once a week is plenty. They've gone for coffee a few times. They've gone to the restaurant in town or sometimes the gas station with all the old farts on Coffee Row as Bill's been advised to stay away from me, my missus, our property, and our respective places of work. Foreshadowing. More on this later. But we've been cordial and we've crossed paths by accident a few times. There's no actual court order, the peace bond has long since expired, but it's a small community, and one of the constables at the local detachment told him that it wouldn't reflect well on him if he went looking for trouble, and a judge had to deal with it again. He and Tanya are separated. That was the first night he came down to the house since the day he showed up, and I beat the brakes off him and got the peace bond. They've been fighting non-stop about Alice since we took her. Their oldest son has refused to talk to him since they separated back in October. Their younger son has been weathering the storm as well as a kid can. Their daughter is a total daddy's girl and is devastated that she's only seen her dad on the weekend. I'm not privy as to what the specifics are. Bill came over devastated and upset. He was 3 sheets to the wind and we were the only place within staggering distance. Tanya told him to leave and that if he didn't, she'd call the cops. Nobody's told me what happened that night, and to be honest, I don't give enough of a crap to ask. Reaping is never as fun as sowing, and Bill's learning that. This has thankfully not impacted Alice too much. Her oldest brother has been a bit of a crap bag about things, but she's thankfully seen the parallels between their situations and taking it in stride. A quick aside on that subject, I'm very proud of her. She's become able to navigate some incredibly nuanced situations with a level of emotional intelligence that I know she didn't pick up from me, so we're gonna chalk that up to my missus going full mama bear. Speaking of, that's some more foreshadowing. On to Tanya. She and Bill are separated. I didn't talk to her when we were talking, so I haven't received updates since. She's told the kids that it's all Alice's fault to varying degrees of success. It sucks, but in helping Alice how we have, we've positioned ourselves to be unable to help her siblings. My genuine hope is that the rest of the family is able to pull off the necessary mental gymnastics to see that those kids are hurting because of how their parents are handling things while still being dead set on Tanya and Bill not being the problem. An epiphany as to what's been going on for the last 15 years would be nice, but that's a big ask, and I worry that a shift in worldviews of that magnitude could cause serious lasting harm to the tectonic plate beneath them when it happens. On to Alice. She's doing really well. Her life is her own, so I don't want to dive into specifics. I asked her before I decided to post this, and she said that it was helpful for healing, but now she's at the point where she doesn't want to dwell, which is fair. The long and short is, school is good. She's working part-time in an engineering-adjacent role at a company that's on her list of places to apply when she convocates. She's sold off her steers and hasn't raised any more because there's only so many hours in a day. She's been playing hockey still, but in a less competitive league. We're looking at subdividing some of the property in a few years so she can own her own space, build her own place, and have independence. That lets us put the title in her name where she's not beholden to us or attached to us in any way, and can have her own flight plan moving forward. She did ask me to say that she's very appreciative of the support that so many strangers have shown. She still goes back and reads comments on the post every now and again. On that subject, I appreciate it as well. On to the rest of the family. With Bill and Tanya separating, I've had a bunch of people who used to be firmly in the camp of me being the source of discord reach out and tell me they changed their minds. Not that they apologized or were wrong, just that their opinions had changed on the subject. I told them to pee up a rope and suck the wet end. We're done hosting the large gatherings at every holiday. I know the post didn't really touch upon my Mrs. family or how they felt on the subject. What it comes down to is they were supported from the sidelines, but are wise enough not to do the dance with the devil that is engaging with my side of the family. If her family were a small farm town full of honest, hardworking people, mine is the riddled trailer park across the tracks. They've been coming out in force for family events, even cousins that live quite a drive away and we're not close with. She told them that I've made being the host for family stuff a big part of who I am and what makes me happy, and they responded in kind. A lot of my side of the family is still coming, but it's a much smaller number of people. Still a lot to cook for, but I enjoy it, and it's all people that respect us and care coming instead of showing up for a free meal and booze. As for my missus, that's some exciting news that was alluded to previously. We've officially begun creating an army of clones. Granted, real clones are expensive and require a lab, so we've opted to make an artificial clone. We've got a little boy on the way due end of July. She didn't want too much about her put into the post, but she signed off on that part. It's exciting, but also intimidating, and that leads to the next part. This definitely impacted me in a bigger way than I imagined. The original post was really about Alice, and there's a reason for that. I'm all figured out, I'm a grown man, and I've got my life in order. She was a scared, neglected kid that needed help. After we got through everything and she was safe, sound, and on track, I read through the comments on the posts, and a few of them really stood out. They bothered me in a weird way that I couldn't explain. People were consistently pointing out that it's a lot easier to step in and make waves to do the right thing when you were already the black sheep. That really cut deep. In a good way, it made me do a lot of thinking and introspection, which I think has led me to a better place overall. I haven't talked much about myself, but I wanted to do so a little bit now that everyone else is taken care of. I grew up being beaten like a powwow drum and was a vicious little turd through most of my childhood and teen years. I grew out of that lashing out behavior eventually and got a job in an oil patch with one of my uncles. I actually met my wife through work as she was one of our payroll admins, and my messy writing made a lot of extra work for her. It's a super cute story, but not one for Reddit. I met the chief working in the patch, and he really instilled in me the importance of being part of a community. He got me into coaching hockey, volunteering at community events. I'm still a volunteer firefighter 10 years later because of his guidance. My entire adult life, I've always been the stable, stoic rock for everyone else. I'm a very tall, robust man with a booming voice and a big laugh. I can fix anything with a screwdriver and a set of vice grips. If you have a problem, I know everyone in town and can get you to the right person and probably get you a discount. I've volunteered in my community everywhere I've been able to. I've mentored with the Big Brothers program, built a playground and facilities for the Boys and Girls Club of Canada, hosted pancake breakfast and steak nights, ran bingos. I've helped fundraise to cover medical expenses for people I've never heard of or met before the fundraiser. I'm a dang good person. and I'm proud of it. I thought my family saw that and was proud of me too. Realizing that no, they weren't proud of me, I just went from being a liability to an asset in their eyes was rough. I didn't have a breakdown per se, but it definitely affected me in a big way. Thankfully, I'm married to the most amazing person to grace this earth, and she helped me through it and supported me every step of the way. Along the way, the family that is genuinely proud of me and that care about me and love me came through too. We had stopped trying to have kids since the start of all this mess, and I wasn't sure I wanted to start back up again, because if I do all that and my family didn't love me, what more could I do? And worse, what if whatever was wrong with me and my family meant I wouldn't love my kids? All is well, life is good, and I'm back to being the BFG, which is how I'm happiest. To answer/address a few consistent comments and questions I've seen across the posts. I have no clue to this day what Bill and Tanya's problem with Alice is. Bill does seem to genuinely want to do right by Alice. I spoke with him a bit when I first had concerns, but to quote Gandalf the White, I looked into his eyes and saw no deception. He's a fool, but an honest one. As long as Alice is comfortable and he's going to be a source of positive energy moving forward, I think she's better off with him in her life in some capacity than without him. The chief is a good man, and he had a similar upbringing to me, but worse, because it was socially acceptable and often encouraged to beat the tar out of your kids at that point in time. He's the kindest, gentlest soul I've ever met. I've never considered writing, and it's not something that interests me. I have been told I have the gift of gab, and I've essentially just written down a stream of consciousness as I would speak it. Sorry for the silly turns of phrase. I'm from the tree line in the prairies. We talk funny here. My alpaca's name is Olivia Cromwell, and she's a cantankerous turd. She bites, spits, and stomps when provoked, threatened, insulted, awake, or because she feels like it. My wife compares my ability to work with her to Chris Pratt's character in Jurassic Park and the Raptors. I tell her I just have a way with aggressive women. She sticks her tongue out at me. I use a lot of aviation terminology in my day-to-day speech because I worked in an aviation-adjacent industry, usually shoulder to shoulder with the chief, who was a pilot in the Air Force. I've picked up a lot of the terms and slang. One last thing, a lot of comments were along the lines of, I wish I had a relative like that, and other people said, be that relative. Just do your best. That's all you can do. Sometimes your best won't be good enough, and that's okay. Sometimes you won't win no matter how hard you try, and that's just life. Nobody can reasonably expect or ask more of you than that. What a freaking hero this guy is. I know that, Bill and Tanya, they kept saying, well, we weren't actually going to kick them out, but clearly there was a history of them excluding Alice from a multitude of events and vacations and things like that, so they clearly weren't treating her right to begin with, and then all the lashing out, it makes sense that she was just trying to get attention in some form. I mean, that's got to be so incredibly difficult to not have her mom and to feel like an outcast in a family that you were there from the start of, so that's got to be very difficult, and just major props to this guy. I mean, to take her in, to take care of her and make her feel wanted and cared about is just a beautiful thing, and I think he's going to make a fantastic father, just based on what he's told us. And, I'm just in that same boat of saying, I wish I had a relative like that. I know I should be that relative, but for right now, I wish I had a sweet relative that hosted great get-togethers and cared about everybody. I mean, I do have people like that, but they don't have alpacas, so it's not really the same. But, this guy is, honestly a role model. I look up to that. I respect that greatly, and hopefully the family comes to slowly recognize just how awesome he is. It sounds like he had a pretty tough, upbringing as well. But, wishing the best for everybody. Happy for Alice. Happy for him and his wife. And, I feel very bad for the kids, for Bill and Tanya's family. And, hopefully it all works out in the end. And Bill will come more to his senses and try and make an effort, I guess, even more so. But, for right now, they all seem happy and content. And what more can you ask for? Be this guy. I'm going to try to. Story 4. Will I be the butthole for reporting a coworker to HR for trying to feed me? I, 24-year-old male, am a small man, 5'4" and 103 pounds as of my last physical. I'm well aware I'm at an unhealthy weight. My entire life I've been small, mostly due to illnesses and a myriad of allergies, and it's admittedly a sore spot. I am working with my doctor to gain weight while still fitting in with my dietary restrictions. No meat, dairy, gluten, or nuts. And honestly, I'm so much better than I was several months ago and proud of myself for the progress I've made. A coworker, Peg, 30-year-old female, got pregnant and recently returned to work late November. She's been increasingly overt and uncomfortable in her concern for me. Peg made and brought in cupcakes for her return, and when I thanked her for thinking of us but refused, citing my gluten allergy, she was visibly upset. She didn't shout or complain much, just sighed heavily and said that she would put this one in the break room with the rest. I felt awful. Then, she brought me a steak sandwich the next day, on gluten-free bread. Again, I thanked her, but I had brought in my own lunch and needed to focus on that. Peg told me it was in the fridge for when I finished. Ended up bringing it home so she wouldn't feel bad and gave it to my boyfriend. Next day, she approached again. I refused again. She insisted. By now, we weren't alone in the break room. She joked that it was rude to refuse a home-cooked meal in favor of that, my lunch. At that point, I just took it and thanked her. Boyfriend ended up eating it as well. Then she just started leaving bagged snacks on my desk. She would approach with a snack or a portion of whatever she made for dinner the night before and not leave me be until I had taken it. I went to our boss and explained that I felt uncomfortable and was told that she was probably feeling maternal and it would negatively impact morale to discourage her. So I've been taking notes since then. What days Peg has given what, when, who witnessed it, etc. From December 8th to now, she's done it 23 times. Yesterday, I took Peg aside and explained that while I was touched, I would appreciate if she wouldn't bring in anything else. She said that I should have said something sooner, that she was only trying to help. Have I seen myself in a mirror? Does your boyfriend like you starving yourself? Among other phrases. Livid, I told her that maybe I didn't feel like sharing my personal medical history with her just so that my wishes were respected. For God's sake, we work with a hospital. Don't you know anything about HIPAA? We parted from there, me childishly storming off and her in tears. Have I already been a huge turd and would a report to HR just be the icing on the crap cake? Edit. To address a few commonly raised points, I said, "No thank you," repeatedly to her face when she gave me the food. She in turn would refuse to leave my desk or stop talking to me, in the break room or halls, until I took it. She returned to work late November, before Thanksgiving, and started this behavior almost immediately. I waited until December 8th to speak with our boss, who is a woman, if that matters, and only then started counting the incidents. She is also no longer pregnant. Rather, I should have said that she returned from maternity leave. Edit 2. I'm aware I misused HIPAA, but was referencing it in the context that she should know better than to pry into medical history to satisfy her curiosity. Also, I wasn't thinking clearly when I said that to her. Update, 2 days later. Honestly, I've never more immediately regretted something. This exploded spectacularly. I went to HR, saying that the matter was settled, but I wanted it documented. Subsequently was told that there would be an investigation and the incidents would be corroborated with witnesses because, as is the full record I claim, is severe enough to warrant potential actions for Peg and several other coworkers who also engaged in her behavior. HR started the process, apparently immediately, because I walked in yesterday to a crap storm. This plunged the department into civil war. Many agree Peg was out of line. Some told me I should have kept the status quo. Some said I was ungrateful and untitled. One said I should have handled this maturely and who could blame her when I look like that, and I should be ashamed of myself. Another coworker suggested I work from home. Another told me he was sorry for not stepping in. I went to go get my lunch out of the fridge only to find someone had disposed of it and left behind the empty Tupperware. Nearly everyone has an opinion. The people in my corner have advised me to keep my head down and to take care. My boss held a meeting, first with Peg and me, then a second with just me. During the one with Peg, I was told to apologize for my part and Peg likewise. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable by caring about your health. My boss asked if I was satisfied now. I brought up Peg's comments and my boss said I invited them. No one would call that harassment, and I need to work on myself. Together, we went through each of the 23 events. She excused each of them until I was left to feel like I'd been harassing Peg. The next meeting was even worse. Effectively, boss said, I told you not to retaliate and instead you searched Peg out to harass her. And your actions have expressed a worrying lack of cooperation with me and your team. She was also disappointed that instead of explaining that I needed her to resolve things, I escalated the situation well beyond the point of reason and cruel to someone who only wanted to help. She said I won't get far in life and I'm not likely to get anywhere vocationally if I can't be a team player and actively sabotage a happy workplace. She hoped I will learn from this teachable moment how to behave in a collaborative environment, as it's inappropriate to involve HR for small misunderstandings. Boyfriend is spitting mad. I'm just tired, confused, and hurt. HR seems sympathetic. Boss is very clearly on Peg's side. The office is split and tense. Currently updating my resume and job searching. It really does feel like a nightmare. Haven't felt good going into work for a while, and this just made it times worse. Relevant comments. Yes, see another post on my profile for further details as well. Also, might be worth adding that we have worked together for 2 years prior to this. The entire department is aware of the fact I have numerous allergies that severely restrict my diet. My boss and everyone above her is aware of my other medical conditions additionally. One last thought. Commenter. Isn't it weird that your colleagues that already know about your food allergies, a good number of them, not reacting when you are offered allergy-laden food? It doesn't make sense that they already know but are not even moderately reacting to it. Food allergies can kill, and them not doing anything is ridiculous, especially when this involves a good number of people. OP. Incredibly, as you can see, the office is terribly concerned for my health. Clarifying post. Same day. Peg's name changed. December 8th, Peg approached with a pack of almonds. CN was nearby but did not get involved. I told her, I can't have those and I don't want them, but thank you for thinking of me. Approached EP straight after. Her response was that Peg was probably feeling maternal and it would negatively impact morale to discourage her. Peg approached after lunch, 2 p.m., asking if I wanted coffee. No one around. I refused. She said she had gotten a free coffee and asked me to take it off her hands. I said I didn't want the coffee. She left it on my desk. I threw it out in the break room. December 9th. Peg and Cece ordered takeout from diner. She offered an order of fries and a chicken salad, saying she knew I need the protein and fries to brighten anyone's day. I refused, and she said, but I bought this for you. I apologized and said I already had my lunch and didn't ask her to. She said that I need to eat more than rabbit food. CC added that it would warm me up. I refused again and said I was more than happy with my lunch and didn't intend on changing my meal. CC told me to back off, OP, it's just a salad. I apologized for being short, but I was really happy with my lunch. Peg and CC left and took the food with them. December 10th, 7:50 a.m. Coffee, refused. Peg insisted, refused again. She insisted again, refused again. She insisted again, just took the coffee to get her to leave me alone. Threw it out in the break room. December 11th, a handful of Hershey Kisses on my desk after a 9:30 a.m. meeting. 2 packages of almonds on my desk after going to the bathroom at approximately 1 p.m. December 14th, at 11 a.m., Peg placed a Tupperware of rice on the table in front of me in the break room. CN, CC, DP, and KG were all there. She told me rice would add substance to my lunch. I said, thank you, but this is enough. People were staring and she wouldn't back down, standing directly in front of the table. I told her to take it back. She sighed and did. The break room was silent. I left to return to my desk. December 15th, Peg approached with salt and vinegar chips and a coffee with soy milk as soon as she walked in at 8 a.m. DP was there but didn't get involved, as was KG and EK. I said, no thank you, but I'll reimburse you the cost. She said the real repayment would be for me to take what she gives me without fussing. I said I don't want it and never asked her for this. She responded, and that's why it's a gift. Bon appetit. KG suggested maybe waiting to be asked before buying someone a coffee, and Peg said that ruined the surprise. EK added that not everyone likes surprises. Peg rolled her eyes and stood waiting for me to take the drink. When I didn't, she put it on my desk. I gave the coffee and chips to EK after she left. December 16th. Came back from a meeting at 10:30 a.m. to a donut and croissant and hash browns on my desk. I approached her with the bag and asked if she put this on my desk. DP was there. Peg said, you're welcome. And I told her, I won't eat this, so take it back. DP said I should eat it, stating I need to be fattened up and could use a couple dozen pounds. Mortified, I left to go back to my desk. December 17th. In the break room at 1 p.m., Peg tried to give me a ramen cup to supplement my snack in reference to my lunch. I said no. She asked if it would kill me to be nicer. I said no, but the ramen might, and left. December 18th. Peg tried to give me a coffee at 7:40 a.m. at my cubicle and stood there even after I said no. She proceeded to ask why I never ate. I said I eat. I just don't eat food given to me. I made a point to say it wasn't personal. I just only eat what I bring in for myself. She said, that's sad, and I needed to loosen up. EK walked by and greeted us both, and Peg left, leaving the coffee behind. I threw it out in the break room. December 21st. Peg brought in a store-bought cake and put it in the break room. At 3 p.m., she said she noticed I nearly missed out, but luckily, she saved some for me. I said I didn't want the cake or else I would have gotten myself some. She told me to "Have a cheat day," and left the cake on my desk. I returned the slice to the break room and tossed it out. December 22nd, Peg placed a bag of chocolate coins on my desk after noon. I told her to take them back. She asked, "Who doesn't want chocolate?" I said, "Me." She said, "Maybe boyfriend would like them." I followed her to her cubicle and gave them back. She rolled her eyes and scoffed but didn't further push. December 23rd. Peg approached me around 10:15 a.m. in the hallway with a package of homemade cookies. I said no thanks, but I appreciated her trying to be festive. I wished her a Merry Christmas and continued walking. Peg approached me again in the break room at noon. CN and PP were also there. She asked if I wanted her to drop off the cookies at my desk. I said no. I already said I didn't want them. CN said that they were super delicious and that Peg even bothered with the gluten thing. PP suggested I bring them home to BF so it didn't go to waste. I said no thank you and left to go back to my desk. After a meeting, 2:30 p.m., I came back to cookies on my desk and a note saying, "Merry Xmas." I threw it away in the break room. December 28th. Peg approached me in the break room at noon and asked if I ever eat anything fun. I tried to ignore her, but she tapped on the table until I said I enjoy what I bring in. She gave me a chocolate orange and a Pediasure saying, "You can't be dieting over the holidays." I threw out both as soon as she left. December 29th. At 4:30 p.m., Peg approached me at the time clock with a pair of granola bars and tried to get me to take them. I said no and said I needed to punch out. She wouldn't move until I took the bars. December 30th. Grab locks? Lox? I said I didn't want it, and Peg spoke over me, explaining it as fermented fish with a dill. I told her that was very interesting, but I still didn't want her offering me food. CN was there but did not get involved. CC said, "Wow," in an incredulous tone but didn't further react. 3 p.m., Peg tried to give me a donut and a latte. When I refused, she just placed it on my desk. I gave both to EK. December 31st. Peg tried to give me a batch of fudge. She only offered the chocolate variety, but she also had made chocolate walnut and peanut butter variants, and not only did I not want them, I did not trust that she was careful enough with cross-contamination. I said as much to her. She was affronted that I would call her dirty, and explained that it has nothing to do with cleanliness, and everything to do with preparation, tools, and surfaces. She sarcastically wished me a Happy New Year and left. January 4th. A tin of assorted chocolates left on my desk, presumably after I left as they were there at 6 a.m., and I'm the first person into the office. Left in the break room as they were sealed. January 5th. Peg approached with a Tupperware container at 8 a.m. when she walked in. I said no. She told me I needed to be less picky. I told her that I appreciated her caring, but I already had my own lunch, so please stop. She told me then I could have it for dinner and put it on my desk. When I tried to hand it back to her, she put her hands up and said, "No givebacks." I returned it to the communal fridge. 5:30 p.m. Spoke with Peg concerning the food. No one around. I said I have been patient and understanding that she cares, but I was not happy about my refusals being ignored, the comments about my food and body, and wished she would stop bringing me food. She said I should have said something sooner, and I pointed out that I had, repeatedly. She said, "I'm only trying to help," and "Haven't you looked in a mirror recently?" I said that was horribly rude. She asked, "Does BF like you starving yourself? Even gay men prefer meat." I said that any diet I was on and what I ate wasn't any of her business. She said, "Clearly you can't feed yourself." I said she should focus on yourself and your kid and stop bothering me. I left the conversation then and drove home. Relevant comments. Save for the changed names. This is nearly what HR received on top of a verbal meeting. Lawyer up. Thank you. Will do so. Working with a family friend who is a lawyer. She works in family court but has so far been invaluable in finding resources. Allergies. For what it's worth, boss and upper management are aware of my allergies. Downvoted comment. What's the worst that happens if you take this stuff home? Itchy and raw hands, tear moons. Allergies are more than simply ingesting the substance. This is the last I will address to you on this matter. Final thoughts. I did not tell Reddit about the full scope of my conditions. As it is, Reddit and Peg both have a similar understanding of my health. I am underweight, have several allergies, and other health conditions I do not feel like elaborating on. Final update, just over 1 year later. It's been a long time since I even thought about this account. The 1-year anniversary of its creation passed not too long ago. When Ben mentioned having gone to Reddit about Peg, I somewhat dismissed that as useful and kept on supporting him in the real world. Life goes on. I happened to check his email recently and saw the notification of the anniversary and a few folks looking for an update. He had given me the password a while back and open permission to check out what people were saying. I read up recently. Most of the comments and advice and well wishes were sweet. Others were harsher as they gave their take. Many people wanted an update. Over 30 plus people messaged him. My husband Ben passed on August 21st, 2021 from complications of esophageal cancer. He was diagnosed in early May. We married a few weeks after, basically just the legal portion of it and a romantic dinner to mark the occasion. He promised me a wedding with the whole kit and caboodle for after he beat cancer. I think we both knew better even then, but pretending and planning gave us something to look forward to and focus on instead of his sickness. It took him very quickly. Ben's boss was first suspended, then let go. So was Peg and a few others who collaborated with her. Ben received a settlement from the owner of the hospital and admittedly a generic apology for how everything was handled. I'd put money on the fact that it just got too big to ignore, with too much being exposed and people speaking up. The boss's reaction, the meetings, removing Ben from group work and emails and project updates, not responding to calls or emails and refusing meetings, all of which was documented by the automated message saying his emails were deleted without opening, even taking his work when he sent it to her for review and presenting it as someone else's. And Peg's behavior, sending out mass texts to others in the office about a hypothetical situation about an ungrateful friend forcing her to cook for him but then not eating it, or the group emails spanning months before things went down, discussing Ben's food and how he just has no taste because he won't take what Peg offered. The exact phrasing was lewd. More than just food was implied. Ben's new boss was accommodating of his medical leave when the time came, promised that he'd have his job back when he returned. His medical bills were covered partially by the owner and a collection from some of his coworkers and our friends, but there was a huge chunk we still had to pay. I had to file a restraining order against Peg after her firing as she continued to try and contact us and stalk Ben especially. Sorry this update isn't comprehensive. I just feel like he would have wanted to put a bow on things and give an ending. Thanks to everyone who was kind to him. It meant a lot. Gosh dang it, Reddit, why you gotta make me feel this way? I don't even know this guy, and I'm heartbroken over this. He clearly had, a lot of medical conditions that he didn't feel like elaborating on, which was enough for me, and it should have been enough for Peg in the story, but I don't know. I mean, clearly she was a problem. I know that I don't know. I hope that it was coming from a genuine concern and there was no bad intent. Like, it was probably, like they said, the maternal instinct. She just have a kid and she felt like taking care and she wanted to care. But when someone's telling you no, you don't ridicule and berate them. You can try and help as best you can, but you don't have to forcefully harass them and shove food in their face when they're clearly saying they're uncomfortable. So she's definitely a turd for that. I hope that she was doing it out of just the goodness of her heart, but was not aware enough to see that it was doing more harm than good. And as for OP, which we now know his name's Ben, I feel for this guy. I mean, he was just trying to live his life and he was trying to fight through whatever was going on that we don't entirely know, and he's just being harassed and kind of beat down, and it just sucks that it ended on such a sad note. And I pray that it was peaceful. I'm sad, man. I'm just sad. Clearly not the butthole for he was thinking about reporting to HR. Good guy. I hope that he was happy. I hope that everything ended well and all that came down afterwards, and I just hope that he went gently into the night. And just a reminder that if you are trying to take care of somebody, that's a great thing to do. It's a great thing to try and, give your best wishes and do your best to take care of somebody. But at the same point, make sure you're observant enough to see whether or not you are actually damaging the person and responding to what they're saying. The first and foremost care is to care, okay? So, and hug your loved ones. All right, I'm sad.